And maybe,
welcome.
Shaka, I can speak a little bit to what Prince said before the break.
Why not?
About the East African community and the process of integration in Africa and what Brexit means for that. But because many people like myself who've been trying to get more U.S. companies to do business in Africa over the last decade really deeply believe that Africa needs a larger market, that functionally many African countries are too small to attract the investment that will create the jobs necessary, and that the kind of bifurcation of all these countries creates difficulty for people to move around, free movement of labor and capital. And so what I think you've seen in the EAC is actually a stellar example of where they have achieved some free movement of labor and free movement of capital. It's a customs union, so therefore they don't charge each other tariffs. They've reduced roaming costs, so you don't have to roam when you're within the EAC. And that alone has increased call volumes between Rwanda and Kenya 4 times just 2 months after that. They reduced the transit times from Mombasa to Kigali. And those things really mean real economic opportunity for the people. So while it is true that some of them are technocratic experiments that are not well understood by the general population, the impact of them, meaning faster trade, a lower cost of doing business, mean that more jobs can be created. So I think it's a very important point that African countries kind of maintain momentum on the economic aspects of integration. Though I think the Brexit will make them weary of more of the political integration efforts.
What about the issue of the ordinary person, for example, within the regional community, not being aware of that thing called the East African community? In fact, most ordinary Africans, as I crisscross the continent, frankly, are not even aware of this thing called African Union. What about that?
I think these are the challenges that all democracies have around education. And as government gets more and more complex, it's more and more difficult to understand all of those things. Additionally, there's a lot of questions around how identity has been shaped historically across Africa. Because you take Nigeria, for example, and people's main identity may start as Igbo or Yoruba rather than Nigerian. So then, to then think that they're see themselves as part of ECOWAS is a question even for the national identity. So I think the question of how people understand the forces on the macroeconomic plane that affect their lives is an issue that all people face, and not only
so
here.
So governments basically need to be really very aggressive in terms of selling that idea.
Selling and educating.
How it is in the benefits, really, the benefit of those people, rather than simply impose. And you find that a lot of these African regional and continental organizations, they are terrific in terms of rhetoric, they are terrific in terms of on paper, but at the end of the day, frankly, it is the top that seems to enjoy the benefits, but not the majority of the people down there.
Well, I think, for example, those who are Kenyan or Ugandan, when they go to get a passport now, they can get an East African passport. So that they do not have to have visas or checks going in between the 5 countries of East Africa.
Right.
So I think that's a real example affecting real people.
But those are still, again, the elite. Can you tell me what percentage of people, in fact, can access passports in East Africa?
No, I agree. It's definitely an economic elite thing, but the goal of all society should be able to move more people into that category, right? And so it's not to prevent that category of people from doing greater business. No, it's to try to move more people away from poverty and into economic prosperity so that they can get a passport and they can travel. That should be the goal and the focus of our efforts. And I think it's a question of education of a lot of the citizenry.